I never expected to find myself as a named plaintiff in a federal lawsuit, but it happened. For the last 5 years, I've had 3 different cancer diagnoses. First, it was breast cancer and then malignant melanoma. When I was diagnosed in March of 2021 with late-stage fallopian tube cancer, at that moment, I knew that I had a terminal diagnosis. So it was the time in Connecticut when normally my husband especially and I get ready to work with the Compassion and Choices team here in the legislature in Connecticut to try to get a medical aid in dying bill passed. The legal team from Compassion and Choices called me and they began to ask, would you be interested in being a plaintiff in a lawsuit? We think we've got 3 good constitutional issues why a residence or why a zip code should not be related to what medical care you can get. I think so. I said, I will do this. I will do this. It may not be in time for me, but I'm going to do this because why does a legislature in any state, Connecticut or Alabama or Texas, have the right to interfere in a person's last act? I was planning that for my death, knowing that it was coming, I wanted to die at home, didn't want to die in a hospital like my mother had. I remember the night my mother died as being probably the thing that changed me more than anything else. I want to die here in my home, with my neighbors and friends and my gardens and my dog and everything around me. The state of Connecticut is making that impossible. Hearing that the state of Vermont has settled with me, meaning the governor, that I could go to Vermont alone was one thing. But when the legislature voted and I was watching it, so I'm sitting at my computer saying, wow, they're actually going to vote this out. It's going to the governor and he's already said he's going to sign it. My head was just filled with awe and my heart was filled with gratitude. As soon as I was eligible for hospice, I registered for hospice. Connecticut doesn't have medical aid in dying. So if I want this to be part of my story, I've got to get everything in place early on.
I'm a family doctor, which means I know my patients over time, and we discuss all the things that impact their health and what their futures can look like with the illnesses that they carry. At various times over the years, I would be referred a patient interested in medical aid in dying, only to discover that they were from across the river in Vancouver, Washington, across the Columbia River from Portland. And while I could provide all other routine medical care to patients who visited me in Oregon from across state lines, this was something that I was restricted from and that they would not be able to access. And a couple of times that was very disappointing patient encounters for the patient, and I will say for myself as well. Compassion Choices is a known and trusted organization to me, advocating for patients' rights with both an Oregon, but especially a national perspective across so many states. I was deeply humbled and grateful when Compassion Choices approached me as potentially being involved in an effort to remove the residency requirements in Oregon. The next phase after the lawsuit settled was when we could move to really the full and formal protection that changing the law would bring. And, it's not a simple issue. Do you open up all aspects of the law? Is it a clean bill that just removes the residency restriction? They're just sort of tactical decisions to be made. It's really, really impressed me again with how important, wherever you are, whatever the cultural background of the state is, how that personal autonomy at the end of life is just so valuable to patients. We'll go to great lengths to make sure they can really take advantage of the opportunity they have to end their story in the way that they want. I really encourage all advocates of medical aid in dying, and of course I speak particularly to physicians and other practitioners, to just be aware of the opportunities that come up in their states or in their communities for the availability of medical aid in dying. you can let your patients know or let your colleagues know that it is an option for out-of-state patients now. You can make the clear argument that if you're not in a state where it's available now, that maybe now it should be. And hopefully we can advance everybody's ability to have access to this important end-of-life option.
I actually don't have anyone in my family who has been a candidate for or has considered medical aid in dying. Instead, I became involved when Compassionate Choices contacted our firm and asked us to help. And the issue struck me as one that will have increasing importance going forward. And the reason for that is that medical technology has advanced to the point where life expectancy has grown so that it's not uncommon now for people to live well into their 80s and 90s. And with that extended life expectancy, more people are dying of cancer, which can lead to unbearable pain in its final days. Allowing medical aid in dying as an option in cases of terminal disease where the patient is in their final weeks or months and the patient desires the option is, in my view, the only compassionate course of action. Otherwise, we would be forcing people to die under horrible conditions that they wish to avoid. Looking forward, residency requirements in Oregon and Vermont are important battlegrounds. By allowing people of other states to obtain this critical end-of-life care in states that currently authorize medical aid in dying, we are effectively increasing access. And the fact that citizens of other states would travel to Oregon and Vermont for end-of-life care shows that United States citizens more generally support the availability of medical aid in dying. I certainly think that the momentum is in the direction of expanding end-of-life care, because people around the country are generally coming to the perception that life expectancy has increased with the improvements in medical technology, and more people are suffering near the end of life, such that we need practical and compassionate ways to address those end of life situations, and providing more options is an important part of that.
We will never have the right of agency to make our own decisions until we get in these states and work with organizations like Compassionate Choices, but especially Compassionate Choices, because they've got this huge network across the country to say, this is how you get involved this year. And maybe this year we're not going to get all the way there, but we're going to knock a few bricks off that wall that's blocking other people in your state from having access to medical aid in dying. So get involved early.